I've had a few people ask me specifically to show more about how I'm using the WeldOn with the syringes that I recommend, these here, and the tips that I use to show the flooding process, the bonding process, that kind of stuff, but a little bit more detailed and up close. I'm going to attempt that. Unfortunately, the only way I can think of doing that is using a portable light, very bright, and my phone camera so that I can get a good angle to show the actual flooding process. Obviously, the first thing that we have to do is open up the syringe. These are the 5 ml ones that I use. And a new one is going to have a nice, easy flow or movement to it, right? The more you use them, I have a couple over here that I've used a few times, because I will use them a few times before disposing them, but they are disposable. This one, the pull and the push, you're putting a solvent in here, so it's going to wear and tear on the rubber stopper of the syringe. It may affect some of the plastic in here, even cause clogs and stuff like that in the needle tip. That's why I buy them in bulk. I think I buy, the ones I recommend are 100 quantity of these, and when I get these, I get them also 100 quantity, but it's like 5 20 packs like this. So you can get them in just a 20 pack. Once you have your new syringe and you're ready to go, you grab, it's going to be really hard to see, grab your tip, and I use blunt tips so that if I accidentally do that, I'm good. Now granted, yes, you can stab and I'm sure you can puncture your skin. Highly not recommended. Then we twist that on. You can check and you can see that we still have good motion and flow. Open your can, and when I get these brand new, I take a dental pick type tool, a straight pick, and they come, when you open up the lid, this is underneath the lid. They say pry this off. I don't pry that whole thing off, because all I need to do is get that tip inside of there to do that. I'm going to attempt to get some good camera angles of all of this. We'll see. I'm going to go ahead and apologize now for the noise from the autofocus of my camera, because if I start doing stuff like this and moving closer, farther away, you might hear some ticking and stuff like that. But the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take my prepared syringe with the tip on it, my can that's open, I've already got the puncture hole in it, and insert and then lean over just a little bit. My can's about a little over half empty, so obviously if it's full you don't have to lean over this far, but I lean over until it just barely, I can see the fluid right at the tip, or starting to leak out of the hole right there. I don't know if you'll see that, and that means I know it's right there. And I just start to pull back and we load it up. That's simple. I sit that back down, and this stuff evaporates very quickly, so highly recommended that you put your cap back on. This is WeldOn 4. I do also sometimes use WeldOn 3. 3 sets up quicker than 4 does. 4 still, if you can see, let's see, the flash time. The working time is 1 to 2 minutes. The fixture time is 3 minutes, and we get an 80% strength cure in 72 hours. This 3 minutes is the one that I'm concerned with, because I don't want to have to sit here and hold stuff in a jig or in a fixture for very long. But I also don't want it to set up too fast like number 3. I need it to flood. The next thing I always do is you want to make sure you have some kind of a disposable rag, whatever. I've been using this one for several months, because all I'm using it for is to wipe off excess, and also I like to get the air, see a little air bubble in there, to get the air out. So in order to do that, we're just going to turn the tip up to the sky and give it a little squeeze, and you can actually watch and see the air come out. And now I know I'm loaded all the way to the top, so I'm not going to get any air. So a couple of things to talk about are the 2 main different kinds of acrylic I use. One of them is cast. This has one layer, or one side of it, demasked already. I'm thinking I may leave the masking on the other side, because then the flooding may actually show up a little bit better. But cast, you can usually tell cast because it's got a brown masking paper on it when you buy it. And then I also use, they say that this is cast, but I'm pretty sure it's extruded based on the way it smells when you cut it. This is the .03. Actually, I think I have a piece of .03 and a piece of .02 here with me. I sure do. This is the .02. Highly unlikely you're going to see the difference. We're talking 1/100 of an inch, but I'll try to zoom in and see if we can't see that during editing. But you notice that this stuff These are scraps. It's been cut. This stuff comes with a clear plastic masking on that I always remove because otherwise you can run the risk of melting the masking into the edge, and it just doesn't give you a nice clean edge. Plus it's easier a lot of times just to remove the masking right off the top. All the stuff that I'm doing for girls typically is getting painted anyway, so I'm not super concerned with this cloudiness that you see, at least hopefully you can see. And that's fumes and debris, and you can see you can wipe some of it off, but you're not wiping much of it off. And I have gone through the process of, let me use my Novus Polish, see if I can polish it off. You can, but man, that's a lot of work, especially when something's getting painted. What we're going to show, hopefully, and we're going to try it with the smaller one here first, up here, and we're just going to see how this shows up on camera. Then all I'm going to do is, while this is sitting here, depending on the size of the piece, I'm able to be able to just flood right from the edge. But a lot of times what I'll do is I'll take and I'll lift the one up and I'll put a big squirt on it and just drop that down on there, and that's fully flooded. Now the problem with that is I got a lot of overspray on that, right? Or extra flooding. And the thing about the extruded actually bonds a heck of a lot quicker than the cast does. So again, just using my rag, I'm going through, wiping up the excess, and then if we look really close at it, we can actually see, and I'll pull the masking off, maybe that'll help on the back side. You can actually see a couple of little bubbles where it didn't fully flood, but I'm sure other people have different methods to doing this. This just happens to be my method, and it works for the product that I deliver. In other words, all of my girls and all the parts are intended to be painted or finished, right? So you don't need a perfectly clear or optically clear flood and bond. We'll move this around in the light a little bit, see if that helps to show a little bit of the cloudiness and a little bit of the, sit my phone behind it so it's black. There we go, that might help a little bit. You can kind of see there, especially with the other light coming into the picture. It's not perfect, but I'm not trying to be perfect. I'm trying to bond and make sure that is a secure contact point, right? Or trying to make sure it's completely bonded. That's that. I can do the same sort of thing with two pieces of cast acrylic. Pull the masking off, and plastic razor blade. If you're working with acrylic and you're pulling masking and stuff like that and you don't own these, buy them. Trust me, see? It's a plastic razor blade on acrylic, and if you do happen to get a smudge or a scratch, you can buff it off with the Novus stuff. Now we're just going to put this one on here. The other thing you want to make sure is you don't want to have any dust, or as minimal dust as possible, because if you put this on top of a piece of dust, it's going to be elevated, believe it or not, by that little piece of dust, and that's going to cause an air pocket. I do try to wipe them clean, but we're going to do the same thing. I'm just going to put, and you see it flows really well, and we just drop that on there like that. You don't need to put pressure. You don't want to clamp, because if you clamp, you're not allowing the solvent to do what it's supposed to do. The solvent, it's melting basically the two pieces, the two surfaces together. But as you can see, that's literally just a few seconds, right? Now, this one is secure enough that I feel comfortable I can do this. But this one, because I just put it on there, I can probably still move it just a little bit, because that is the difference in, well, time, and also like I said, the extruded stuff, it melts the surface quicker, it bonds quicker. But again, you can see that this is not a perfectly translucent. So I don't ever foresee myself wanting to get into bonding flat surface to flat surface and telling somebody, oh yeah, it'll be optically clear, because it's a whole different process. It's not going anywhere already, right? Now I can take this, I can set this aside and move on to the next piece. And again, like I said, because this stuff is getting painted, I'm not concerned with those tiny little air bubbles that are in there. I'm not concerned with the fact that it is not optically clear. Some people also wonder about when you're doing black acrylic, because a lot of people like black acrylic because it's super shiny and, oh, you don't have to finish it and da-da-da-da, I don't need to worry about painting it. Well, a couple of things about black acrylic. One, the edges, anytime, acrylic is plastic, and if you're laser cutting it, you are going to, and I will probably have a separate picture that I'll cut away into for this, but the edges, where it cuts, it's a laser. You're burning the edge. That's what you're doing, right? So you're creating a very slight melt around the edge. As long as you are okay with that and you understand that, then you don't need to worry about it. But that's why a lot of the stuff I don't do in a black acrylic. And black acrylic is more expensive. This may give us a better idea of the cloudiness of the extrusion on the black. And we're going to go ahead and we're going to do another piece of clear, cast on top of this. And we'll sit that on there. And then just for these purposes, I'm going to flood from the edge. I'm not going to pick it up and do it the other way. So you can kind of see that's what happens there, is you end up with a hole or a big pocket, big void of adhesive. I'm trying to get it in. We can see it on the camera. There you go. Right there. All of this, there's no glue, there's no solvent there. And that's not going anywhere once it cures, but I'm typically not a fan of having that big of a pocket on it. The other thing about black acrylic is, and I don't know if we're going to be able to see it or not in this, but that little bit of overflow I wiped off, it's permanently damaged that. It's caused a haze across the surface. Again, I mean, it does the same to clear, but again, if you're doing clear, you're typically going to be painting it, so I'm not too concerned. But if you're asking for something in black, that's a possibility, and well, that sucks, because this piece would, at this point, if this is the front side of it, this would have to be 100% redone. Yes, you can try to use Novus Polish and get some of that out, but the problem is because this is a solvent, it's actually really eating away some of the surface of that, and that can be an issue. The final thing we're going to talk about, and these are the smallest pieces I could find of clear that I actually have a flat edge on as far as scrap goes, but that's fine. I call this scrap, but I mean, I would use this for test cuts of something, to test and engrave, look for detail in an engrave, that kind of thing. But what I'm going to show is I'm going to show an edge to edge or an edge to face. And this kind of stuff, you typically will want to have some sort of a jig set up to hold things where they need to go, making sure stuff is held in place and all that. All right, so we've got our two pieces of acrylic. Now, I'm just going to bond them like this, right? Typically, when you're doing that, you're going to have this lined up. You're going to make sure that this is at as much of a right angle as possible, and you can use whatever you happen to have that is a right angle, or use an actual angle gauge. But I trust Apple products, so I'm going to take this. And the nice thing about this is cardboard, so I'm not going to bond this in theory to the piece. So I'm just going to take this, push this up to the edge, make sure that this is on there nice. Check this edge across, and then at that point, you're really just going to come across the gap. I'm going to try to use my phone camera to come in at this angle while I do it to see if I can't get a better view. Of course, it's going to be challenging to hold while doing it. Let's see here. So you can see this way. So you can see right there. That's bonded, or that's flooded. This is not. The easy way to tell is you can see the light refraction change from here to here. So I can actually look. It almost looks like I'm looking straight through something. You can see the outside edge, but this over here. So as I apply, you can see that change. And then typically what you want to do if you're doing an edge to edge is come to the other side. Now you're not going to see much of a change. You'll see a slight change, but not much. But you're just flooding the other side just to make sure you got full coverage. Of course, lining it up on that seam and on that side is a challenge. Then I always like to go back and just double check that I got full coverage. And you want to try not to do what I just did there, where I dropped a little spot on there. So the difference from this side to this side to this side. And now that this is set for a little bit, it's not going anywhere. I'm going to take the box out of the way, and you can see it stop right there. This is where it stopped flooding, right there. So I'm going to come to this side and work my way down, and there we go. And again, come to the outside. You can see a little bit change there, but you do have to be very, very careful with the light pressures, because you don't want to. Typically, when you're doing it end to face, it's because you're building a box and you want the box to look clean. So you don't want it to run, you don't want it to fall or drip around to the faces. But yeah, that's it. I hope that helps. Hope that gives you a little bit more insight. If you got questions, please feel free to comment and ask me, or message me, text me, whatever. I'm more than happy to help.